Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Automotive Podcast. My name is Sami Assad, and with me, as always, is my good friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. Say hi to the people, Ben.
Greetings, human listeners.
Greetings to everyone. If this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, thank you for trying something new. I will reiterate, Ben and I are a pair of automotive journalists, but more important than that, we're very good friends. Right, Ben?
Accurate.
Accurate indeed. You can find Ben's work all over the internet. And I'm just going to let him, take the helm of the podcast and tell you exactly some publications that he's recently written for.
Sure, you can find my work at Motor Trend, at Inside Hook, and at Capital One Auto Navigator.
And you can find my work at Capital One's Auto Navigator as well, and autotrader.ca and driving.ca. Ben, we've got some pretty interesting vehicles to talk about. Ones that we don't get to take a deep dive into too frequently, right?
Why is that?
Probably because just circumstance, I suppose.
That's a very unsatisfying reason.
I don't know.
Just circumstance.
The one in particular there that I drove that I don't think we've discussed at length in any length of time is the Subaru Solterra. I drove the 2024 Subaru Solterra recently, and
Sami,
I gotta tell you,
Sami,
there's times when I wish that I got my time back from driving that.
Sami, let's point out the fact that you went to a launch event for a 2024 model in, I'm looking at the calendar, the month of October.
Yes, that's right. This is a vehicle that will be relevant it's not relevant currently, and it might not be relevant for another 2 months until a 2025 model year model shows up.
I'm very curious to dig into those quite catty comments in a few seconds, but I do want to ask, does this mean that the 2023 was still on sale in 2024, or is this just the first time Subaru was doing like a promotional thing with journalists for it?
No, I understand the 2023... this might be the first time that they're showcasing the upgrades that the vehicle got for 2024.
Okay.
And they've had a press event in 23 as well. A really quick, and I will reiterate, this is a very fast event. I mean, I think I told you it was maybe like 24 hours on the ground before coming home.
And to also reiterate, we haven't driven the Solterra, either of us, but I drove the BZ4XW TYL.
That's a Toyota product, yes.
But it's the same vehicle, right?
Mechanically identical.
And once you remove the mechanics in an electric vehicle.
I think visually very similar, if not identical.
What was the one more point of clarification? The gauge cluster on the Solterra, what's it like?
What?
The gauge cluster, what is it?
What do you mean by that?
Did you have one?
Yes, I had a gauge cluster. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Why? Does the BZ4X not have a gauge cluster?
I remember being really disappointed in the BZ4X's gauge cluster. And
that's very funny. I did not even realize it could not have.
No, it has one, but like I remember it being like so tiny as to be non-useful. I'm trying to look it up right now because it's been 2 years.
It's probably the exact same, but I will explain to you one of the upgrades for the Subaru Solterra for 2024 is to somehow make that gauge cluster more useful without doing anything to the gauge cluster itself. Do you want me to tell you how they did that?
Yeah, I'm assuming some kind of Jedi mind trick.
No, apparently the main issue was that the steering wheel of the Solterra
blocks it completely.
Blocks it completely.
Yes, that's the issue. That's what I remember.
For 2024, the Solterra has, they call it an oval-shaped steering wheel. To me, this is more of a squircle. It feels like it has 4 corners.
Now, is an oval a subset of what circles are? No, serious question.
I think so. Yes. I said squircle, like a square.
No,
circle.
I heard. Yeah, I heard you on that.
An oval is a lot like a circle, as far as I understand. So that is one of the upgrades. So there's actually a number of really big upgrades, and I think we should probably discuss the 23 model and listen, like the Toyota and Subaru EVs in this class are not super competitive. They feel down. They are down on power. They're down on range. They're down on charge times compared to all of the competitors in this class. Is to say, it's like an EV crossover, right?
This is kind of the same thing that the 500e is. Can we agree on that? This is a compliance car from Toyota that becomes a compliance car for Subaru because they don't have the ability to or the resources to develop their own EV right now. And Toyota has been so uninterested in EVs that they're so far behind what the Zeitgeist is right now in terms of features that people are looking for, range that's competitive, that kind of thing. So when I look at the BZ4X and the Solterra, what I see are 4 years ago, kind of where EVs were. And the problem with that, I think, is that as with the 500e, which is in a similar spot, both of these Subaru and the Toyota are priced like they're competitive with Hyundai, with Chevrolet, with whoever.
Well, everyone knows that one of the main issues with EVs is availability. And because a lot of people want the good EVs, they're out of stock. And
in Canada, in the US, there's a lot of stock.
And so now what you get is the non-competitive EVs. These things are just filling up the lots, aren't they?
These are the placeholder EVs. These are the cars you can buy, still get the discount from the federal and the provincial and the state governments. Yeah. But you get them home and you're like, maybe I should have waited.
Maybe don't take me off the waiting list for that Ioniq.
And I want to stress, these aren't bad vehicles, but they're not good vehicles.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing. And I want to be clear. Like the 2023 was limited in a number of ways. I want to drill down on this facet of the 2024. Okay. Do you mind if I jump into this?
Yes, it is. Okay. It is what you drove. So of course, please take the wheel.
The 23, one of the things most people had a complaint about was the gauge cluster. They couldn't use it. And when you move the steering wheel, the gauge cluster doesn't move with it. You have to put it in some weird angle.
Yeah, so I drove the BZ4X on a road trip with my mom, and we went to the Star Trek experience in Ticonderoga, New York, which is like where you can walk through the Star Trek original series sets that have been completely recreated. And it was really frustrating because I could not see the gauge cluster.
Yes, useless. They've fixed this with the new design of the steering wheel. They've also added a driver monitoring system. So Subaru has it's called driver focus, I think it's called. I don't know if this is a Subaru system or a Toyota system. I think it is a Toyota system because it enables a hands-free driving feature, which is the opposite of Super Cruise. So Super Cruise only works on like highways. This one only works on speeds under 40 kilometers an hour. What is that in miles? 25?
Yeah, so it's a traffic jam system? Because doesn't Toyota have a traffic jam assist already?
So that's exactly what it is. It's a traffic jam assist. You can take your hands off the steering wheel and you can use that. Now, my understanding is that Subaru will not offer this system on the BZ4X.
Were they worried it would just be too good and they wouldn't be able to keep up with demand?
Exactly. Yeah. I heard some really weird... from what I understand, it needs this weird steering wheel in order to work. I don't think that's true because it apparently works in other markets.
Okay.
I don't know. They just don't want it.
All right. I don't know what to say.
Another aspect of this vehicle that is worth discussing is its charge times. One of the areas of the many ways that the Subaru is kind of uncompetitive is with its charge time. It has a peak charge rate of, I think, 100 kilowatts. This is in a world where there are vehicles that can do 350 kilowatt charging.
Well, in theory, right? But like in practice, even in practice, like those 350 kilowatts, they're up at like the 220, 230 range.
That's still twice this.
Doesn't the Mach-E do 150?
The Mach-E, yeah, 150.
And that's like,
I think it can actually get up to 200, I think, in some cases.
And I think that's considered the low end of like charging at this point.
And one of the issues with the Solterra was that the 2023 model had a cap on how many times you can DC fast charge it.
What happens if you exceed that cap?
I believe it would just drop it down to like level 2 charge speeds or something.
And this is to protect the battery?
So they say, yes.
Okay. I want to bring something up here. If you are a major car company like Toyota that has engineering geniuses everywhere inside your company, and you are the last company to market of the major automakers. Well, no, you're not last because Honda still hasn't done it. If you're second to last to market with an electric vehicle, and you've had all of this lead time to get to the point where you're ready to launch something, would you not be able to launch the best EV on the market?
If you wanted to.
At the very least, one that is competitive with what's already out there. This is what blows my mind about the Solterra, and the Solterra less because Subaru is at the mercy of what Toyota decides. But why not? They could have made a really great BZ4X, and they did not. And there doesn't seem to be a compelling reason as to why they didn't, other than corporate inertia and an unwillingness to buy into battery electrics. Okay,
yeah. I mean, I think that's all really true because, to me, Toyota being at the helm of this project means that they were probably really just trying to get this done, get a product on the market. Toyota's is not a. I mean, I think we've bashed on Toyota a lot lately especially about their trucks. But they've still delivered some of the best hybrids on the market still to this date. And I think the Prius is really impressive. The all-wheel drive Prius, the plug-in version of the Prius are still excellent vehicles. So it's not to say that they're like washed right now. They're not. They still have the capabilities to make some pretty good cars. They just didn't put those people on the Solterra and BZ4X, or they didn't give them the opportunities to cook, you know?
Yeah. I mean, either way, it's...
Let me get to, I mean, those are some of the key upgrades on this vehicle. Now you can fast charge it, I think, more than 4 times on a trip. Subaru themselves said, you know, the car has a range of, 227 or 222 miles on a full charge. They themselves did not believe that people would go over 600 miles in a single trip. Okay.
Well, they've kind of done their best to make sure that's an unappealing thing to do.
And now it can go, I guess, 1,000 miles before really panicking. There's actually hardware changes to the battery conditioning system as well. There is I wrote this down somewhere, and I should probably have it in front of my face. I believe a water-to-water cooling system.
Is there any other EV that limits the number of fast charging sessions?
As far as I understand, no. I don't know. Or we haven't heard about it. If so,
again, another way this vehicle is unique.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's very strange that, you know, people would have found this out. People found that out pretty quickly. You know what I mean? And they were like, this is a limitation, clearly.
And the other thing too is like it assumes that people are only fast charging when they get to empty, right? Like, oh, no one's going to go 1,000 miles. Well, what if they like, you know, they're going to lunch and they fast charge, and then like they're at dinner and they fast charge, and then they don't have a charger at home, so they fast charge. So they've used 3 in a day.
Yeah.
Like it feels like that limit is, you're right there. It's right there. It's right in your face.
It will charge from 10 to 90% in 48 minutes. So it's not very quick.
No. Why would you?
The other interesting,
90%?
I mean, sorry, this is just a test I'm seeing from another publication.
Okay.
They say 35 minutes for 80%. So that's another like 15 minutes for an extra 10%.
And then that sounds like acceptable until you realize it's still only like 200 miles of range, right? Like it's
exactly.
That's where it gets you, you know. The battery itself is small.
The other issue is the output of this electric drivetrain is really sad, in my opinion. 215 horsepower and 249 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah, it's front-wheel drive, right? Oh, the Subaru is probably all-wheel drive.
It's all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
It uses a pair of, I believe, 40 kilowatt. Dual 80 kilowatt motors. This is not a fast car. Like,
and it's heavy, I'm sure. Like 4,500 pounds or something?
I didn't get the weight, but I believe it's around 4,500 pounds.
So that's the same weight as like a Hellcat Charger or my Jeep.
But with 200 horsepower.
With 200 horsepower, yeah. 215
horsepower is really low. Like
it is.
I cannot overemphasize how bad that is. You know how people dinged a 2,700 pound Subaru for having 200 horsepower? This is a 4,400 pound Subaru with 215 horsepower. You know what I mean?
The highest horsepower Nissan Leaf has 214 horsepower.
That's sad, right? This is really not good.
The Leaf is older technology as well. So
yes. But there are some upgrades. I mean, I told you it has a new water-to-water heat exchanger to better manage the temperatures when you're DC fast charging. They believe that it will last longer at its peak 100 kilowatt charge speeds now, due to this sort of cooling technology and heat management.
But don't test it out more than 4 times, or we're voiding your warranty.
Exactly. I'm curious about that. It is very interesting to me that in just a year of this Solterra being on market, they've decided to make some hardware changes to the vehicle in addition to software changes. I think that's an indication that they're actually not kind of phoning it in.
I think it's an indication that they didn't care enough about the product to make it right when they brought it out.
That's fair too. That's also
perhaps
possible.
It wasn't enough real world testing, which is why they ended up with that gauge cluster problem and these other small issues.
Remember when the wheels were falling off?
Wheels were falling off. I also want to bring up the Nissan Leaf weighs 3,500 pounds.
Wow, that's wicked. Okay,
so it is. It is the curb weight of a Solterra is 4,350. So the Leaf is like 800 pounds lighter.
And has the same power.
The same power. Yeah.
Okay. So we drove this car, and I have to be clear. Driving it on the roads, it does feel better than 210 horsepower. You feel that 249 pound-feet of torque more than you feel at 210 horsepower. And the all-wheel drive system we got to put to use on some off-road parks, which was really cool. I don't know if people will be taking their EVs off-road, because you mentioned to me before the podcast that you think that there's a bigger risk of damaging the underbody of an EV when you're going on, which is more significant than I think some of the other vehicles.
There's just more important parts there. Like, in a gas vehicle, you worry about things like the transmission and the oil pan, right? But those are relatively small in comparison to the size of a battery that's underneath. So there's just more opportunity to damage the battery. And the thing about an oil pan is, if you dent it, your car doesn't destroy itself, right?
Or catch fire.
If you dent a battery pack on an EV, you could have written off the vehicle from an insurance perspective. And it's unlikely that because they're just, not all companies are willing to do repairs on a battery pack. They want to do a replacement, and replacements can be tens of thousands of dollars. And it's unlikely a warranty is going to cover off-road activity.
Yeah. And then one other thing is, I mean, they boast that they have quite a bit of ground clearance. It's the usual, like 8.7, 8.3 inches of ground clearance or something, which is okay.
I feel like maybe if you're a hardcore passionate off-roader and you might be willing to take an EV off-road, but it wouldn't be a soft road thing like the Solterra. It would be like a Hummer EV, something that has like legitimately tall ground clearance. And
at that point, you're spending. I mean, this car starts at $46,000 and goes up to $53,000.
That's in the U.S. or in Canada?
That's in the U.S.
Okay.
In Canada, that price is closer to the $60,000 mark. So starts at $60,000 and tops out at $66,000, which is a smaller gap compared to the U.S., which is interesting.
Now, my question for you is, would you take this over the 500e that you drove?
Yeah, maybe because of practicality. I mean, it's cool having the 4 doors.
It's $10,000 more, though, right?
It is $10,000 more. I mean, the 500e in Canada is $42,000, and this is almost $60,000. So it's actually closer to $18,000 more.
In the U.S., though, I think they're closer together. I think.
There are so few vehicles that are worth taking over the Solterra. Yeah. And I'm questioning everything about it, right? Like, it has so many quirks and weird, design decisions. There's no labels for any of the window switches. Is that weird to you? That's weird to me.
What do you mean labels?
Yeah, it doesn't. There's no like icons on them.
Are they hidden throughout the cabin and you have to find them like a treasure hunt?
No. It has a Toyota-based infotainment system, which is pretty cool. I guess it's better than the Subaru one.
Okay.
It listens to you saying, "Hey, Subaru."
Wow.
Yeah, great. In Canada, they sell this car without, what is it called? TPMS.
Why is that?
They say that Subaru owners are more likely to have Subaru owners are more likely to have a separate set of tires here in Canada.
Okay.
For the winter wheels.
Okay.
And that those customers would frequently complain about the TPMS monitor when they switched their tires over.
So instead of giving a second set of TPMS to put in their second set of tires, they decided to remove a basic safety feature that is, I believe, illegal to remove in the United States.
Yeah, it's mandated in the US.
So a tire pressure monitoring system that is illegal to remove from a car in the US has been removed from the Canadian version for reasons that are extremely vague and seem to be more linked to customer education than anything else.
It's so funny because I believe I've been in vehicles that have a switch that would turn them to their second set of TPMS sensors.
Oh, I have no idea, but I can tell you that for one of my cars, I have a small box, and all I have to do is walk around the car and push a button on the box when it's touching the stem of the tire, and it resets the TPMS for the new set of tires. It's not a difficult thing to do. It's certainly not a difficult thing to do at a dealership. You know what I'm saying?
I wonder if they realize that Solterra owners with a vehicle that has way less maintenance than a gas product, they just might not see their dealers ever again.
Maybe.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying maybe.
Oh yeah, maybe. What else does it have? I was just like caught off guard by all the strange elements, quirks of this vehicle. Oh, it doesn't have a rear wiper.
That's great. That's awesome. I mean, Hyundai also did
now,
and
that. Unlike yes, but see the Hyundai is a hatchback design, right?
Yes.
This is not. This is basically one of those sedan style, like a body style on stilts.
Okay,
so it will definitely get dirty, like covered in snow. That rear window will definitely get covered in snow.
I know it's the number one complaint of Ioniq 5 owners that I've spoken to.
Yeah, this is going to be worse. And again, when I asked Subaru Canada about this, they were like, we haven't heard a complaint yet. I'm like, I don't think you guys have sold your cars to people, man. Anyways, some of the positives of this vehicle is that it has all of these off-road features. It has the Subaru X mode, which includes like a hill descent control, which worked really well. It has the opposite of X mode, which is, I guess, Y mode. They call it grip.
Wait, is Y the opposite of X to you?
Maybe. Or what? B?
Are you basing this entirely on a video game controller?
On alphabet?
Game controller?
That's right.
I don't know what the opposite of a letter is. That's something that no one has ever posed me that question before.
Well, we'll work on it. We'll tell our listeners about it.
Perhaps
next
it's
week,
like a letter in another alphabet, like Greek or Cyrillic or something.
Oh, that's true. It has something called grip mode, which is
I'm listening.
An uphill or off-road cruise control system.
Okay.
It was kind of cool. It worked really well. It basically combines. If you've ever used X mode, it can be actually really impressive if a little loud by using like the ABS sensors and reroutes the power to each wheel that has the right grip. It works really well in slow speeds, and to see it, kind of working this way with the electric vehicle or the electric motors was really impressive. I was caught off guard because we were caught in some really bad rain in a gravel and mud off-road park, and I just didn't think these aren't like
the Solterra, right? You're just like, see ya.
Yeah, I was ready to. And these aren't like special tires in any way or form. They're just regular EV tires. So to see it kind of like creep up this grade, I was pretty impressed by that.
Good thing it doesn't. And it has TPMS. It's a good
yeah, in case you crack a tire, you'll never know. Really,
you'll never know. Well, you'll know when you're scraping the battery across a rock in slow motion because of the off-road cruise control, because one side is lower than the other now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking at this and it just, so many parts about it feel like a class below. That's what I wrote in my review for driving.ca. I think the output of the motor is more in line with the Kona EV. The range and charging speed is of like a last generation product. It just isn't doing it, right? Like, it's just not delivering a competitive product. And the problem that I have, the worry that I have, is that Subaru is adamant that they will be delivering more EVs. Not this one. More than the Solterra. I don't know if they're based on the Solterra, because if they are, that's a problem. That's a red flag to me.
I don't see how they could be.
They could be based?
I don't see how they could be based on the Solterra.
They have to be designing something new, right?
Yeah, of course. Like Honda has their, remember we were talking about,
Yes.
the Prologue and the MDX. Well, Honda has their new EV coming out. It was driven by, or at least witnessed by some journalists last week.
Yeah, I saw some of these. It was like based on an Accord, I think, the prototype.
Kind of looks like an Accord, yeah. So, I mean, at least they're doing something, right? Which is what we were after them to do, and I'm very curious about that vehicle.
And I saw that they had some traditional Honda quirks in it. Like somebody showed a demonstration. Did you see this one? Somebody showed a demonstration where you can change the interior like noise, like to match like a gas powered car. I know that's stupid because one of the assets of an EV is that it's quiet.
Yeah. But
now you can make it sound like whatever you want in the car, and they even they made it sound like I think a first or second gen.
Insight?
No, not an Insight. Maybe an NSX or an S2000 with that like VTEC charm after 6,000 RPM.
All right.
Which sounds like it could get grating after a while, but hey, whatever. Like you're doing something different. That's
Don't worry. If
here,
it's
right?
based after an S2000, in regular driving, you'll never access VTEC, so you don't have to worry.
It's just so cool to me to see an automaker do something with its own charm and quirk. And look at this Subaru and be like, yeah, we got a bunch of Toyota stuff in here, and we renamed all of these off-road features, Subaru off-road features, and here you go. Like, this is our car now. And it just isn't. It just doesn't feel right.
No, I agree with you.
I'm worried that I hope this wasn't a huge like investment on their part, and it is a stopgap solution, not just for the customer, but for the automaker themselves. That has to be costly, right? Like that can't be a cheap move to make.
What can't be a cheap move to make?
Just sell something for 2 or 3 years until they get their real EV. I
don't know. I mean,
yeah.
As I said, Toyota's had every opportunity to create their real EV, and they've chosen not to.
And it just blows my mind because Toyota, and I think Subaru in the past has used Toyota's hybrid systems, but Toyota has delivered really good hybrids. They are not scared of making a good electrified vehicle.
But they don't believe in battery electric vehicles. The hybrids to them are something completely different. Like
they don't believe in making money off of EVs.
No, they don't believe in EVs, period. To you and me, there's a link between hybrids and electric vehicles, but not to Toyota. To Toyota, these are like two different silos of the industry. And even getting plug-in versions of their cars took a long time for that reason, right?
Yeah.
And they are not sold. They're still all in on the hydrogen economy that doesn't exist. And that is a blind spot that has ensnared the company in terms of being competitive with electric vehicles.
They can't be this behind in EVs on other markets, are they?
They are 100%.
This is the BZ4X the only EV that is sold by Toyota outside?
That I don't know.
I mean, including Europe and Japan.
But you got to figure America is Toyota's biggest market.
Okay.
So if this is the face they're putting there, that shows you how much confidence they have in the EV market as a whole. And don't forget, this is also a company that every chance it gets undermines EVs publicly.
Yeah.
Like they'll make some statement about how EVs are the future. Like they go out of their way to talk about this, because I think that since they have so few battery electric vehicles in their lineup, there's a lot of legislation in various countries that is designed towards convincing automakers to build those kinds of vehicles. And Toyota is on the outside looking in, and they're seeing a competitive advantage being given to companies like Hyundai and Ford and General Motors, who have kind of not necessarily gone all in, but are definitely pushing hard in terms of battery electrics. Ford maybe less, but definitely GM and Hyundai. And so they don't like the idea of being on an uneven playing field. So they will snipe at that publicly every chance they could get. And that's not meant to that's not communication for customers. That's communication for legislators.
Yeah. And I mean, that doesn't affect, the customers shouldn't care about that. The people don't care about that.
But it paints Toyota as like a parochial kind of company that's like caught in some backwater of engineering, which we know isn't true.
Absolutely. And I think you can talk a little bit more about Toyota's engineering with the car that you've been driving, the truck you've been driving recently, right?
Yeah, so I drove the 2024 Tacoma Limited Hybrid, which is technically, it has different names in different markets. In Canada, it's called the hybrid, limited hybrid, but in the States it's called the limited iForce Max. And iForce Max is the hybrid max drivetrain that we've seen in other Toyotas, but rebranded for trucks and also redesigned to use the longitudinal layout instead of the front wheel drive layout from like a Grand Highlander or something like that. I drove the regular Tacoma, I want to say in the spring, and it was fine. It did truck stuff, but what I was really curious about was this hybrid version because Toyota's gotten rid of V6s for the Tacoma as of this model year, and the same thing goes for the full-size trucks. They get rid of V8. So there's no more naturally aspirated engines available, I believe, for Toyota's pickups. The limited hybrid or the iForce Max, this version of the drivetrain, it's the same 2.4 liter turbo 4 that's found in like the standard Tacoma, but it comes with an electric motor that I believe is sandwiched between the engine and the 8-speed transmission. Okay. And in total, you get 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque. That's a pretty big jump over the base model, and it's also more torque than you'll find in any other vehicle in its class. I think the closest midsize is the Denali version of the GMC Canyon that has 310 horsepower and 430 pound-feet. So close, but still not quite. I think you might be able to get that same drivetrain in a specific Chevrolet Colorado as well, but I'm just not sure which model.
Wow. Okay. And then there's this whole hybrid system, right? Like,
yeah. It's designed to give you decent fuel mileage. In Canada, the figures are on the highway. It's around 10 liters per 100 kilometers. I'm going to translate. I think that's 23. Yeah, it's 23 and a half, 24 miles per gallon. So that's, not bad. But what I think Toyota has really done with the Tacoma is tuned the hybrid system for performance. I think that they're leaning on that more so than anything else because...
What kind of performance? Like straight line speed or like towing capability? Or
465 pound-feet of torque is quite a bit. I mean, especially for a pickup that is not a full-size truck, right? I'm just trying to find the regular Tacoma's fuel mileage here. Yeah, so 23 city, 24 for the hybrid. And then funny enough, if you get a two-wheel drive version of the base model, it's 21 and 26. So they're close to each other, but the payoff is with the Tacoma, with the hybrid Tacoma, you're getting way more power to go with decent fuel mileage.
Okay.
This is a heavier truck than the regular Tacoma. This plays out when you're looking at its tow rating. I believe that the limited... So in Canada, the Hybrid Max can only be ordered with the limited trim or either of the off-road models. So there's a TRD Off-Road Pro, and there's a Trail Hunter. And I think there's just a regular TRD off-road that can come with it too. But in the States, you can get the iForce Max with the TRD Sport on top of all of those.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that gives you kind of like a street truck type of thing.
Yeah.
Not
what did they used to have before? X-Runner? Is that what it used to be called?
X-Runner, yeah, but it's not as cool as the X-Runner. The X-Runner was like pretty neat, I think.
It was super cool.
Was it
supercharged?
You could get a supercharger. There was a factory supercharger kit.
That's so cool.
That you could buy. And I'm looking, it actually seems like, this is odd, the way that they're discussing the lineup. Yeah, so it's not necessarily called out. In the US, you do get the TRD Off-Road iForce Max. The Trail Hunter has it standard. But then if I go to the TRD Pro, it doesn't give me it is standard there as well. Sorry. In Canada, they call it out in the name. They just keep hybrid in the name for all of these. There's another different... So where was I going with all of that?
I think we're talking about towing power.
So it has a 6,000 pound tow rating.
Which is a bit less than the non-hybrid, right?
Yeah, I think it's 6,500 or 6,600. And that's because you have the weight of the battery in the hybrid system eating into the gross vehicle weight rating. So you get more power, but you lose a little bit of utility and practicality with the truck. There's one other area where you lose practicality. The limited model that I drove only comes with a 5-foot bed.
Oh, okay.
If it's a 4-door truck with a 5-foot bed.
That's interesting. I want to talk about this actually really quickly.
Let me just finish my thought.
Okay, fine.
If you want the 6-foot bed, you have to get the Trail Hunter. So I don't understand why.
And the Trail Hunter is kind of pricey, right?
The Trailhunter in Canada is $20,000 more than a limited. In the US, the difference isn't quite that great. It's only $8,000 more than a limited.
So it's not a little bit pricey. It's much pricey. It's like a 25% or more expensive.
This is an expensive truck. So in Canada, again, the baseline price for the limited, which is where the iForce Max starts, it's $66,000. And then you add another $20,000 for the Trailhunter, which means you're paying like mid 80s for a Tacoma. That is a little intense, in my opinion. In the US, you can get the limited without the iForce Max for $52,000 or with it for $55,800, and the Trailhunter is $62,000.
Okay.
So that's a huge, there must be some type of equipment differences between the two countries. I'm not going to get too far into that because Toyota can get very confusing when it comes to trying to parse out different levels of equipment. But suffice it to say, that is a substantial difference. And it's just disappointing to me that obviously a 6-foot box is available, at least in Canada, and they just choose not to make it available with the limited.
Now, the 6-foot box is available on the non-hybrids as well, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Phew. I panicked because, like, we've all seen Tacomas that are still on the road today from like 20 years or whatever, 15 years ago.
Keep in mind that you can get the non-hybrid with the extended cab version.
Yeah.
Whereas all of the hybrids are 4-door.
I see.
I found the drivetrain to be as advertised in terms of power.
Okay.
Like, it's got good power. What's interesting about the Limited is it comes exclusively with full-time 4-wheel drive and locking differentials. I believe they're Torsen differentials front and rear. It also comes with coil springs at the back.
Interesting.
And in Canada, standard adaptive shock absorbers. I believe in the US as well. So those shocks are a little strange because the truck has like 5 different drive modes.
Oh.
There's like an Eco, Comfort, Sport Plus, and I think Normal or Auto. I don't know who's driving this truck in Sport Plus.
What is the Tacoma Sport Plus like?
It is not a sporty vehicle whatsoever. There's nothing about this vehicle that is exciting to drive. It is a good truck driving experience, but it's not like you're not going to be corner carving in this thing. Really kind of feels like marketing triumphing over common sense with that. But I want to mention that I did a bunch of truck stuff with the vehicle. And I found that the coil springs were not a problem. There are some people who don't like coils in the back of a pickup because they feel like when it's loaded, they get a lot of squat and they don't have the same type of strength as a traditional leaf spring. But I loaded a couple thousand pounds or maybe like 1,500 pounds worth of wood chips in the back of this Tacoma twice. And I had to do it twice because the bed is so small. And I had no squat. And I also towed my Z, which together with the trailer is around 3,500, 3,700 pounds. Let's call it 4,000 to be safe. No squat with that either. And I also, with both of those loads, at no point the truck feel like it was struggling. I mean, it's not a rocket ship when accelerating up a hill towing 4,000 pounds, but it feels good. It feels comfortable, powerful. I mean, no problems there.
I want to hear closer. I want to hear a little bit more about the payload because I believe that's not far off of its payload like rating of like I think 1,700 pounds.
This is my guess for the weight.
That's pretty good.
What I did was I drove
How much did you pay for?
Well, I drove up. So some neighbors of ours, some friends of ours, they work at a local sawmill, and I had mentioned that I needed wood chips, and they were like, just show up at like 4:00 and it's not that busy and we'll just load you with some wood chips. I'm like, okay. And they had a giant like front end loader and they just dumped wood chips in the bed until it was like, there was this tall lump in the back of the truck. And then I drove home. I mean, it's a lot of wood chips. I had to put a tarp down inside so it wouldn't damage. The bed had a lining, but I didn't want any scratches when I was unloading because I'm using like a shovel. So a plastic shovel, of course. I put down a tarp, and then once I unloaded half of it, I was able to pull out the rest of the tarp all at once. So you end up like, it's a real easy way to get that kind of load out. And I'm assuming it's at least 1,000 pounds. I mean, it's heavy. I maybe on the 1,500 pound side.
That's wicked. And it worked as advertised. I mean, I'm just more impressed that, do you think that the hybrid powertrain really showed its worth with this much?
It's definitely faster than the non-hybrid I drove earlier this year.
And confident, right?
Yeah. There's a definite advantage to it, no question. But there were also problems with my truck that specific.
Like what?
Well, so the drivetrain was good in terms of power, and also it's willing to go into electric mode fairly often. Like if you're cruising around a parking lot at low speeds, you're not using the gas engine. It has a 1.4 kilowatt battery, and it's not afraid to use it. Mm-hmm. But the biggest issue I had was how rough the drivetrain felt at cruising speeds. So when I say rough, if I was driving, let's say 70 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, or even slower than that, sometimes around 55, the revs would be in like the 1600 to the 2000 RPM range. And if I got gently on the gas pedal in that range, it would vibrate. There was this vibration and harshness from the front end of the truck. And I don't know if that was a problem with the hybrid system or the four-wheel drive system or whatever it was, but it was I could replicate it at will constantly, and it was really distracting. And then when I was towing, I would get on the throttle with the truck under load, and the range of speeds, engine speeds where I would get that nasty vibration was much larger.
Interesting.
And that is not a confidence builder for a truck that is in the $50,000 to $60,000 range. I was quite disappointed with that.
I mean, it needs to be refined. It needs to, when you're spending that much money, you're thinking about a vehicle that is to me, the more you spend on a vehicle, it either goes two ways. It either gets more specialized or it gets more like all-rounded, right?
Exactly. And with the Limited, it's not a specialized truck. Like Toyota's really into its off-road vehicles. There's 3 or 4 different off-road trucks now. You can get the Tacoma done up in those trims. But with the Limited...
It's like soft road, off-road, and really off-road.
Yeah. But with the Limited, they're kind of going after the Canyon Denali, which is like the other luxury truck. I believe there's a Lariat version of the Ranger now. And there always has been, and now it's nicer inside. I have not driven it yet.
Lariat doesn't seem as a trim name. Lariat does not seem as nice as Denali.
Yeah, it's more of a historic kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah. And what was the top trim of the Rams called back in the day?
Back in the day, I don't.
Or not back in the day, just recently.
I think they're just called Limited.
Longhorn, Laramie Longhorn. No,
yeah, the Longhorn was like a special version. I don't know if it was the top trim. Oh, okay. I think it gave you like different leather and stuff. I remember in the mid-teens, they were giving you like saddlebags on the back of the seats. Yeah, I remember that. So getting back to the Tacoma, the Limited it's supposed to be a luxury truck. It's supposed to match up with the Denali, which is roughly the same price, same power. The Denali is not super nice inside. I think there's a real disconnect between actual luxury in the mid-size segment versus luxury in the full-size segment.
Yeah.
But the Limited does not. The Limited, it's even more so. Like, you get inside and it's fine. Everything is fine. It looks okay. The controls work well. The infotainment system is good. I have no complaints about the fit and finish of the cabin, but it doesn't feel luxurious. It feels normal. It feels good. I guess maybe like the edge of premium. So Toyota's not really selling it there. But the other issue I had was I had problems with the vehicle's electrical systems, 2 specifically. One was the self-closing tailgate. So the tailgate opens and closes on its own. It's motorized, but the version that I had refused to latch. Every single time it would get to the top and then it would kind of stop and make a latching sound, but you could see there was a gap where it wasn't latched, and then you get a warning on the gauge cluster telling you that it wasn't latched. And no matter what I did, I could not get it to latch unless I closed it manually. And it seemed like the tailgate was a little bit off center, like maybe it hadn't been assembled properly, which is surprising for a Toyota. But in a Limited truck, I'm paying this much money. I feel like that's a little, again, disappointing. Then after I towed with the truck, the next day I went out to drive it. I'm disconnected from the trailer. It's been sitting all night long. I turn the truck on. It gives me, first of all, a message saying no trailer detected, which is a little odd, but I'm like, okay, whatever. Then it tells me all of the safety systems have been turned off because there's a trailer. So these are conflicting messages.
Yes, I think you got to go back and check. Okay?
Yeah. So when you're driving with the trailer, it turns off a bunch of the safety stuff because the vehicle's longer and heavier and whatnot, and it tells you that when you turn it on, and it gives you like messages on the dash with little icons that are redded out or oranged out or whatever. But it was doing that for the first 10 ignition cycles after I'd already disconnected the trailer. It didn't seem to matter how many times I started. I lost count at 10. And then it stopped doing that, but it started showing me the trailer brake message, which is like when you turn on the truck with the trailer connected, it also shows you the gain that you have on the trailer brakes.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was showing me that even though I don't have a trailer connected and haven't for like 24 hours now. Then that eventually went away. But I had problems with that. And then when the trailer was connected, it has a backup assist system that refused to work. It just would not work. It gave me an error message every time I tried it. So that's surprising to me that I would have that many problems with the Tacoma Limited related to towing, related to electrical systems, related to the hybrid system. It doesn't give me a lot of confidence. And it got me thinking, are these gremlins because this is a first-year vehicle? Is that what we're looking at here?
Yeah, it's got to be. 100%. That has to be it. But that sounds like, I mean, I don't know. First of all of those things are related. It's even related in the same area of the vehicle. I mean, a tailgate and then like towing concerns.
Yeah. And
it's all coming together in the same place. I mean, I think when you first mentioned it to me, I was worried that there might have been some damage or water damage or something that could have snuck through. But it could also just be, we've been having a couple of these Toyota trucks, and they've kind of like a couple of issues have slipped through the cracks, I think, like this.
I also
like attention to detail.
I also had trouble getting the trailer lights to work with the truck, which is odd because I had the connector attached and the trailer brakes were working. I could set those, but the lights would not. It has a trailer light test, and I could not get them to light. It was the third or fourth time that I unplugged and replugged over like a 20-minute period that I finally got it to work. So yeah, you're right. It does seem to be all in the same kind of area. I do want to point out I had no problems at all with the non-hybrid turbo Tacoma from earlier this year. None whatsoever. I didn't tow with it, but no tailgate problems, no electrical systems, no weirdness.
Interesting. So that's it.
That's it. I mean, this truck is expensive. I would like if it worked.
Exactly. Not only if it worked, if it was smooth, if it had, again, it seems like attention to detail is something that's lacking on the Toyota trucks recently.
It feels like they hit the main points of what they wanted the truck to do and then didn't refine it. And that's surprising to me because as much as we just complained about Toyota not being competent at building a competitive EV, they are very good at building gas vehicles for the most part.
That's very true. Yes.
So this is not a continuation of the Solterra conversation. This is
no, not at all.
This is something else and something surprising, I think. It's for that reason, it's hard for me to recommend this truck. My neighbor has a Tacoma, previous generation, and he's curious as to whether he should upgrade. And I had to tell him no, because I don't.
Not yet.
I don't feel, well, even still, I don't feel like the new Tacoma is good enough to make you forget the old Tacoma. I think the old Tacoma, as I had complaints about it, just feeling too old, being on the market a little too long, et cetera, et cetera. But at truck stuff, it still does a good job. And I'm not sure the new truck is good enough or better enough to recommend an upgrade. I don't even know if it is an upgrade. On paper it is, but to pay that much more for it, I'm not sure.
Now, we've talked about the non-hybrid Tacoma in the past. If any of our listeners want to check that out, and they haven't, they can just head on over to our website, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com, and they can see a list of all of our previous episodes, as well as like photos and links of the stories that we've written about the given vehicles, right? And additionally, you can subscribe to our podcast using the website.
Yeah, but don't click on the Google podcast link that's still there, even though it doesn't work. I'm going to have to get rid of it.
What if it do? I'm worried about that.
If you click it, it takes you to a page that says Google Podcast is now YouTube Music or something like that.
Yep. And
which is very helpful.
Not useful.
No.
Additionally, you might want to get in touch with us. We welcome any of our listeners to reach out to us. We love it, in fact. You can reach out to us on the website, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com. There's a contact form. You just fill it out, and all your comments land in our inbox. We chat about it. We bring it up on the next episode if we can. Or you can reach out to us the old-fashioned way. That's email in this case. It's benjamin@benjaminhunting.com. Or you can find us on Instagram. Ben is at huntingbenjamin, while I am at Sami_ha, like you're laughing.
And Sami, what are you going to be talking about next week?
I've got my hands on a car that I didn't realize was kind of exclusive. It's the Volvo EX30, which is a small electric car.
Okay, I'm going to be talking about something much larger, the Ram 1500 Limited. But this truck in particular has the new twin-turbo i6, the high-output version. So I'm very excited to talk about that.
I love that. I think you showed me a badge of it where it was just a bunch of initials on it or something like that.
Yeah, I know you like seeing random consonants and nouns and not nouns, but vowels. I'm confused about how language works, so
me too.
Doing my best.
That's what happens after a long podcast like this one.
Oh.
We just let it all out.
All right.
Thank you everyone for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.